in this episode how to solve system linear equations in two variables using a substitution method. Coming up, back into action. Hey guys, substitution method for solving a system linear equations in two variables. Let's break it down. So, system linear equations in two variables, or sometimes it's called simultaneous linear equations in two variables, if you will. Well, basically what is that? That you are given two linear equations. So linear means all your variables, which are two, that's why it says in two variables, and typically x and y are used to represent these two variables. Sometimes other letters could be used, a, b, but mostly it's kind of convention, a standard, and x and y, and we're looking for that x and y. But just kind of a side note, just good to know that other letters also could be used, like A, B, or V, W, something more bizarre. But anyway, and the power of these variables is 1. So it's not quadratic, it's not cubic, so it's 1, it's linear. That's why it's called linear. All right. Why it's a system? Because you have two, and you have to solve them simultaneously, at a go, at a time. That's why another name for system, sometimes it's called simultaneous linear equations in two variables. Now, alright, it could be more than two, it could be 3, it could be 4, or even more, or even 5, even 6. So things might get more bigger and more complicated and sophisticated. So, and to be honest with you, substitution method still applies even if you have more than two, so it can be used. Now let's make all things clear. To be perfectly frank with you, there is another very common method, and you might have heard about this, or you might know how to do this. There is elimination method, and you might say that if I use elimination to this one, you could solve it easily, faster. Yes, I would agree with you at this point, but this video about substitution, and I'm going to show you how to use substitution. So about elimination, it's another technique, and you could use it if you like, if you're allowed, and this is another story, and there is another video, you can check it out later. But sometimes you are required, or your teacher tells you you have to use substitution. So let's dive into this. Now, the idea is, the gist is, so substitution will come up later on, and you will see, I will show how does it work. And actually the method implies itself. Why substitution? Because what we are going to do, we are going to substitute. But before, your first step, you always start off by expressing one of the variable. It could be either x or y in terms of another variable. So you're going to get along one of the variables that you are given. You could choose, you could pick, you could select either x or y in terms of another variable, from which equation you are going to express your x and y. As well, it's your choice. You could either go for the first equation, or you can choose from the second one. But my pro tip is, you should go for the easiest one. So you don't want to make your life difficult. I hope it's not difficult already, but just make it easy. Otherwise, if it's a little bit difficult, that there are more chances that you might make mistakes and go astray. So just choose the equation and the variable that easier to express, to make a subject of the formula, and after substitute. So you would have much less work to calculate, to substitute, to distribute, and things goes on. Now, what actually pops out at you? Pops out at you this x, kind of naked x, which the first coefficient is actually 1. So I would go for this x and express this x in terms of y from my first equation. Let's do it. So I'm going to pick the first equation and I'm going to express x in terms of other variables. So I'm going to make, in other words, I'm going to make this x the subject of the formula. So get x alone on the left side and move, basically you have to move to y to the right side. So to express x, you have to move this term to y by subtracting 2y from both sides of your equation. So you do this subtraction. So your x becomes just 1 minus 2y. This is my first step. Pretty easy. So we express x. I'm going to kind of circle it because this fact I'm going to use it later. I'm going to use it for actually finding my actual value for x. Now, the next step, I'm taking this x and I'm going to plug it in instead of x in my second equation that I haven't used yet. So again, I'm taking this x and I'm going to plug in all this expression, which actually namely 1 minus 2y. I'm going to place it, insert it instead of x into my second, this one, equation. So let's do it. It becomes 4. I'm going to open up the parentheses and inside I'm going to place this expression. So 1 minus 2y goes inside the parentheses. Now, you just have to carry down all these terms that your equation implies. Now, there is no x anymore. There is basic linear equation for y. So you solve it normally. So linear equations come up and this is just no x. This is just normal basic linear equations for y. You solve it normally. You want to get y alone on the left side and get an actual value, actual number for that y. So let's do it. The first step, you have the parentheses and you have a term which is actually a number and you have to distribute it out. You have to multiply it out. So open up, remove the parentheses by using a distributive law or distributive property. So you take this 4 and this 4 applies to both terms inside. So 4 times 1 gives you 4, minus 4 times negative 2 gives you negative 8y. You still keep this tail. Alright, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to collect, actually I'm going to leave your y terms on the left side, so with negative, and I'm going to move this constant 4 to the right side by subtracting all 4 from both sides of your equation. So what to do to one side, you have to do to another side of your equation. Just keep it balanced because this is a quality sign. So you have to do the same thing. You have to apply the same thing to both sides at the same time. That's the gist. Now, this 4 cancel. And you can collect this y. So you can combine these two like terms together. Minus 8y minus 2y gives you negative 10y. And 9 minus 4, that gives you just 5. Now, the last step, you want to get y alone, so anything that attach y, divide it out. Since you have negative 10, divide by negative 10 both sides. And your y becomes so here cancel out, they go away. So you do this simple math, you pull out negative 5 10, 5 goes into 10 twice, and your y is negative a half. This is your y value. This is your actually half of the solution. So keep in mind that we're actually looking for both. We're looking for x, we're looking for y. And your entire solution, it's a pair. It's x, y. So x equals something, y equals something. So we're just halfway. We just only found y. Now we have to find x. Otherwise it's just half. How to find x? Alright. We're going to back into this circle expression that I told you before that I'm going to use it. And since we got the value of y, I'm taking this y and I'm going to plug it into y over here. So I would get the value for x. So your x becomes, you just rewrite this expression 1 minus 2 times, and I'm going to substitute, insert this negative 1 over 2. So this cancel, and your x is just positive 2. This is your answer. X equals 2, y equals negative a half. Now, it's totally valid. You could write out your answer as x equals a number, y equals a number. But there is another way of writing, another common way of writing an answer. And since there is a pair of x, y, and this is an ordered pair, ordered means that x comes first and y comes second. So typically we would write this parentheses, brackets, and since x comes first, x takes first place and y takes the second place after x. This is just another version of your answer. You don't have to write both. You could either write like this or like that. So this is totally understandable, and this is again a standard, and everyone understands that this is your x, this is your y. And you write it using parentheses and you separate them with the comma. You're technically done, and this is your answer. But what you can do, you can just verify your answer, just to make sure that you are correct. Because there are so much nitty-gritty and so much work. It's like these pesky fractions come up and you distribute, you substitute, you express this little negative sign, plus, minus. So there are so much nitty-gritty, so much things, lots of things going around. So it's worth to just verify your answer, to check it out. So you just literally take this x and y and you want to plug them back into the original equation, into both of them. So you need to take x and y and substitute into x and y in both equations. So let's do it. For x equals 2, when you and y equals negative 1 over 2, when you substitute into the first one, so it becomes 2 plus 2 times negative 1 over 2. Check to see, does it equal 1? 2 and 2 cancel each other out. So you would end up with 1 equals 1, which is true. So it works out. How about the second one? So you take the second linear equation and you substitute x and y. So it becomes 4 times 2 minus 2 times negative 1 over 2. So since 4 times 2 is 8 plus 1 gives you 9, which is true. So it checks out. So and we are completely done at this stage. So again, this is your final answer. So you could either write as x equals a number, y equals a number, or just an ordered pair where x comes first and y comes second. One more to go. Let's hit this one. So at the first glimpse, at the first look, this is a little bit different from what we did before. Let's just express, I would go for these two x. And I'm going to express this x in terms of other variables. Again, my point is, you could go for x over here or y over there. It's completely up to your whim. Now, let's do it just in stages, incrementally, step by step. So you could do things simultaneously, but I will just do it one step at a go. So 2x becomes 1 minus 3y. So what I should do is just subtract 3y from both sides normally. So what you do to one side, you do to other to make it, keep it balanced. So, and my x becomes, you divide by 2 both sides. So these fractions come up. So your x is 1 minus 3y over 2. Don't worry about this, just keep it, because this one I'm going to use later. Now, actually I'm going to use it now. Now, your first step is completed. We isolated x from the first equation. Now, the second step is substitution itself. That's the name of this method implies. I'm going to take this x and substitute into the second equation instead of x. So in place of x, I'm going to write this whole expression. So you could draw parentheses, and what goes inside 1 minus 3y over 2. You still have this tail plus 2y equals 0. So no x's involved in here. So it's equation in y, we solve it for y as a linear basic equation in terms of y. So the way you would do, you could multiply by 2 both sides to get rid of these 2, because you see you have this like over 2 and you can clear off this fraction. So I would multiply by 2 but both sides and including this one. So we multiply by 2 both sides. Just be very, very careful when you deal with this kind of fractions. So since you multiply by 2, this side 2 and 2 cancel, and I will open up the parentheses in a bit. And don't forget to multiply these 2y by 2, because these 2 affects these 2y. So it's 4y. And since we have 0 on the left side, it remains 0. That's fine. Now, we did similar before. We want to distribute the parentheses. We want to open that up, remove them by distributing 3. So 3 goes and applies to each term inside the parentheses. So open it up. 3 minus 9y plus 4y becomes 0. So things getting better and better with the time. So collect y terms, it becomes just minus 5y, and you move this 3 to the right side by subtraction 3 from both sides, becomes negative 3 over here. And finally, the last step, your y is 3/5. So it's positive, we divide both sides by negative 5. So that goes away, and this is your y. So unfortunately, we got these pesky fractions, but there's nothing to do about this, so just keep going. Now we're not done yet. We have a half a solution. We have y. Now let's get our x. So you take this y and you plug it in into y here. All right, this formula. So minus 3. So instead of y, I'm writing 3/5 over 2. And you could just handle this one. So it becomes 1 minus 9 over 5 over 2. Okay, 1 is the same thing as 5 over 5. So always when this one or a integer number, whole number comes up, so think of this as the same number over itself. And because I want to get the common denominator, which is 5, so 1 could be thought as 5 over 5. So 5 over 5 minus 9 over 5 gives you minus 4 over 5. And when you divide it by 2, it's the same thing as you multiply minus 4 over 5. You multiply by the reciprocal. So you multiply this fraction by 2. You multiply this fraction by 1 over 2. You multiply this fraction by reciprocal. So it's the same thing as since 2 goes into 4 twice, your x is 2 over 5. Negative 2 over 5. Okay, just delete it and now this negative 4 over 5 you need to divide by 2. So that's the same thing as negative 4 over 5. You need to multiply by the reciprocal of 2. So negative 4 over 5 you multiply by 1 over 2. So it's the same thing as negative. So don't lose this negative. Multiply by 1 over 2. And since 2 goes into 4 twice, you will be left with negative 2/5. This is your x. And again, you could either write your answer x equals negative 2/5, y equals 3/5, or you could join your answer and write it as a pair. Ordered pair, and x comes first, negative 2/5, and y comes second, 3/5. So this is your entire pair of these two numbers. So that actually work for both equations. So they satisfy these both equations. And at that point we're done. Actually, we're done. Well, I hope it helps you. Well, substitution might seem like kind of tedious, and actually, as I mentioned before, there is elimination method, which is, to me and I believe for many people, it's faster, and you could use it as well. And just check out my other video for elimination. Thank you for watching and train your brain. I know, guys, everyone hates maths, but if you like my video, please click like, share with your friends, leave the comment down below, and be sure to subscribe so you will not miss my new video.